Hi, this is Adam Singer. I'm Product Marketing Manager on Google Analytics, and I will be giving the introduction for today's webinar. Before we get started, I just wanted to go through a couple housekeeping things. The number one question that we get asked is, will this webinar be recorded? In fact, yes, it will, and you will get emailed a link very shortly to a post on the Google Analytics blog with the webinar embedded. Also, please note there are several widgets in your console. A couple of the important ones to go through. There's a Q&A widget, so if you have a question at any time during the webinar, feel free to submit it. At the end, we'll be responding to the questions live, and if we don't get to your question, we will be able to respond to it on the blog. So please ask a question if you have one. The resources widget includes several useful links to a resources PDF of today's webinar, our website, blog, Help Center, and more. So be sure and check that out. That's got a lot of useful links. And we also encourage you to share any interesting bits from the webinar with your communities on Google+ and Twitter. Feel free to use the hashtag measure. That hashtag is actually not just specific to us. That's to a wider community of measurement experts. So if you've got questions, someone else will certainly chime in if we can't get to it. And please, at the end, don't forget to fill out the survey before you leave. You could win a Nexus 7. So that feedback also helps us improve and makes our future webinars even better. And now I'd like to introduce Sarah Jablon-Moked. Sarah is a product marketing manager on the Google Analytics team focused on helping Google's clients better understand the customer journey. Sarah, take it away.
Thanks so much, Adam. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about measuring success in a multi-device world. This is a topic that I'm really interested in, and it's something I've really been working on for the past couple of years, really how we can better understand the customer journey through excellent measurement. And even though it's something that we all value, you'd really be surprised how many people simply are not planning effectively enough and are not using the available tools at their full disposal. So today I want to talk about some great things that we can do, give you some actionable ideas, and really first I'd like to start out by talking about people and how our behavior is changing. So this is an image that I really like a lot. It shows how rapidly things have changed just in the past several years. If you look at the image on the left, that's from 2005 in St. Peter's Square when Pope John Paul had just passed away. And you see people there, they're in the moment, and there's kind of one early adopter down there in the lower right-hand corner with his cell phone camera. Then you look at the image on the right-hand side, just 8 years later, when Pope Francis has just first been ordained and he's giving an opening talk, and you see everybody there engaging in the moment through their digital devices. So I'm sure that's something you guys can all identify with as well, but what's fascinating to me is really how quickly that's happened. It's just been 8 years. And if that's a lot in 8 years, if you look at the past just 3 years, we see that the pace of change is only continuing to accelerate. So we've got more and more global internet users, more YouTube views, Facebook, tweets. It's just a dramatic increase all the time. And that's also affecting the way consumers behave. We see that the vast majority of purchase decisions are made before people even arrive in a store. People with multiple devices, 90% of them are switching between screens in order to complete tasks. So this is something that's affecting all of us. Every one of us can identify, but the question is, for you as marketers, what can you actually do about this? What does this mean for you and your business? So, we know these things are happening. We've experienced them ourselves. I, as a marketer, have also experienced them. And I think what we want to think about is how we can look at this changing world and how we can think about it from the perspective, in fact, that we've always had. So we still want to know our customers. We still want to see what's working, and we still want to improve our results. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is 3 lenses of measurement that we use to think about these ideas. So in order to know our customers, we want to think about holistic measurement in today's multi-screen, multi-channel world. And in order to see what's working with our campaigns, we need full credit measurement. And finally, in order to make sure that we're always improving our results, we need active measurement. So I'm going to go through and talk about each of these 3 different types of measurement. And I'm going to try to offer you 2 or 3 actionable steps for each category and some things you can start doing today. And as we go through these topics, what I'd like you guys to do is to kind of try to think about how do you stack up? How would your measurement programs score if you had to give them a score? And then we can revisit that at the end of the session. So first, let's get started with holistic measurement. And what I mean by holistic measurement is really making sure you're getting a full understanding of your customer journey and thinking about all those different ways that your customers might be interacting with your brand. So as we've mentioned already, today's world is multi-screen, it's multi-channel. People are not just interacting with you through one single medium anymore. You've got to account for the fact that people are switching between devices all the time, they're using different devices at the same time, and they really use those different devices as they want to acquire the information they need in the moment that they need it. So if you have an online business, this means that you can no longer be relying just on one single online channel. You need to understand and you need to engage your user's journey across all of those different multiple screens. And the next thing that's important to think about for holistic measurement is that we need to realize that the customer is increasingly in control. So that path to purchase is going to be less linear than it may have been in the past. So of course we still have the same basic marketing funnel ideas that we all learned about back in our marketing classes. So we still have an awareness phase and a consideration phase, an intent, and finally that purchase. But those things may not be happening just in one single funnel. Different customers are going to be following different paths, and they have the option to kind of join in at any time. So what does that mean for you as a marketer? Your job is now to figure out how to efficiently tap into the new dynamic and anticipate where those audiences are going to appear. So you can really only do that if you're focused on analyzing the customer. So not just analyzing individual channels separately, but thinking about what does that full customer journey look like? How can I provide the correct message and the correct information to the customer in the moment when he's seeking it, in the location where he's seeking it? And that brings us to another really important topic here, which is silos among your channels. So one thing that I've seen a lot when I talk to our clients is that there are structural challenges here. We may all understand that the world is moving this way, but it can be difficult for us to make those changes because of the way our business is structured. If you've got a little 5-person company, you can say, hey, we can all get together in the same room. We can all talk about what we're doing with our different marketing channels. If you're working for a much larger company, you may have really strict structural silos in your business. So maybe you've got your search engine marketing in one department, and then you've got your display marketing is actually sitting in another building or even someplace else in the country. So it's not necessarily that easy for you. I think the key here is to make sure you're aware of the fact that you may have silos, and that if you're looking at those different channels separately, you're going to be missing out and you're not going to be getting an accurate picture of the full customer journey. I've actually seen circumstances where people are double and even triple counting ROI. So if you add up the return that people say that they're getting on their search campaigns and the return they're getting on display and the return they're getting on email and all their different various online and offline channels, that actually adds up more than their total revenue. So that's the kind of thing that you want to avoid. You want to make sure that you're not just reporting out separately and that you're not just measuring separately, because what's important today is not just those channels. What's important is really the customer and what you can do for the customer. So let's talk about a few other ways that you can actually take action on that right now. The first thing is that even if you can't break down all those silos right away, at the very least, you can get together some kind of working group and meet with your colleagues. So talk to them about, hey, you're in this group, I'm in this group. How can we make sure we're at least taking into account the fact that my marketing is going to be impacting people at this point in the customer journey, and your marketing is probably impacting them at a different point, and let's work together and make sure we're coordinating. Next thing I want to talk about is building out a comprehensive measurement plan to make sure you're really holistically measuring everything that's important. And all this is going to help you to get to making sure that you have that one version of the truth that everybody can get behind and that everyone can agree upon. So in order to make your data really complete, the first thing you need to do is you need to just determine your business objectives. So if you have a business, it may be clear to you what your objectives are, but you want to think through clearly why you have an online presence. And if you also have an offline presence, how does that online presence complement your offline presence? The next thing you want to do is actually define your strategy and your tactics. So the strategy is really what those things are that you're trying to do in order to reach your customers. And you want to think about which customer actions indicate success or contribute to your success. So strategy is clearly going to vary based on the type of business you have. If you've got an e-commerce business, you may be looking to generate online sales. If you have a lead generation business, then what you're doing with your online presence is just trying to get the leads, and maybe you're going to close them in some other way offline. You might be a content publisher, so you've got videos and different kinds of articles, etc. So really you have to think about what is your strategy. So your strategy is, I want to get more readers, I want to sell more things, I want to get more leads. And the tactics are the techniques that you use to actually go about doing those things. So it could be that you're providing specific promotions. You could be developing specific on-site content like an educational video, or maybe updating the way your site is organized. Whatever the tactics are that you're using, just go through that exercise of kind of writing out what your strategy is and how your tactics support that strategy. The third thing in developing a comprehensive measurement plan is to identify your key stakeholders. So your stakeholders are all of those people who need to see that measurement plan and who need to have inputs into that measurement plan. So who's the person at the end of the day who's going to be able to authorize changes, who's going to be able to say, yes, this is what we want to see, this is what we don't want to see? Who are the analytical experts who need to be involved to make sure that you're doing the measurement correctly? And who are the people who just kind of need to be informed? You want to let them know what's happening, but they may not be as actively involved. Next, you want to think about categorizing your channels and segments. So we've talked about how different channels can have different impacts at different times in the journey. It's really important to actually go through the exercise of thinking about which channels do what and which segments are going to be most active for different channels. And the better you understand that as you begin, the better you're going to be able to measure those things accurately. Finally, once you've set up all of those things, you want to set holistic KPIs, holistic key performance indicators. So that means not just saying that I want to increase my search efficiency by such and such, but that I want to increase the total effectiveness of my marketing campaigns in order to get more customers doing what we want our customers to do. So you need to reach out to those stakeholders, find out what's important to them, make sure you've got realistic targets that are set, and include those in your KPIs. And just again, you can spend 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour writing out this plan. Having a plan in place will help you to conduct more effective measurement and get more out of your measurement program. So what are some tools that you can actually use to help you now that you've got your measurement plan, now that you're thinking more about holistic measurement? We are, of course, coming to you from Google Analytics, so I'm going to talk to you about what we can offer you. We certainly want to make sure that you've got your analytics set up correctly. That's one thing that we see, which is a challenge for some of our users, that they may be using analytics, but they haven't correctly put it onto all of their pages, or they're not using it correctly with all of their channels. So please make sure that your analytics is actually set up correctly so that you're collecting all of the information you want. And we've got lots of great resources. As Adam mentioned, we have that resources PDF. So all of the links that we mention here are all linked out, both from the console widget and also in that resources PDF. The next thing you want to do with your analytics is to make sure that you've got goals and or e-commerce set up. So these are tools that can help you see whether your users are really engaging with your site and make sure that they're doing what you want them to do. And once you have those set up, then you can unlock all of these other more advanced features, which are extremely helpful. So I'm just going to go through a few of them. We, of course, have many others that you may wish to use as well, but these are some that are especially relevant for holistic measurement. So Universal Analytics is a really amazing new tool. It's something that we've just launched fairly recently. And I want to talk to you about that because it's a new way basically to go beyond measuring just web and app behavior. You can even track users on devices like TV boxes, game consoles, or even internet-connected refrigerators. So it lets you really capture that full customer journey, and it's a great way to do end-to-end measurement of the entire customer. Next one I want to mention briefly is multi-channel funnels. I'll talk a little bit more about this in our next section on full credit measurement, but just to mention right now that it's a great way to see in one place everything that influenced your conversions. Next is mobile users and apps. So we have tools to show you what people are doing on mobile, whether it's a mobile website or mobile application. And then finally, social, so that you can really see the impact of your social media on your sales and engagement goals. And as I mentioned, this is just a sampling of the tools we offer. There's certainly many other tools that can help you in your holistic measurement. So now that we've got a basic idea of what all the things are that are happening in our customer journey, let's talk about full credit measurement. So what do I mean by full credit measurement? What I mean here is that you need to understand not just where all the customers are coming from and what that complete journey looks like, but how you give value to each of those different channels and what's the different impact that different channels are having. So something that I find interesting when we talk about full credit measurement is that when we talk about attribution, which is basically the way, a term for assigning credit to those different channels, we see that 72% of marketers, this is from recent research, agree that attribution enables better budget decisions. And yet despite the fact that everybody knows that it's a really helpful, great thing to do, 44% of them, so nearly half, aren't actually doing it. So why aren't they doing it, and how can we do something about that? I think the first reason why people aren't doing it is because they may not be aware enough of some simple tools and some simple ways that they can get into it. And I think the second reason is just the same kind of like, oh, we're busy, there's too many other things to do. And that's really why I'm glad that you guys are here today, and I hope you find this useful. Even if you're busy, even if there's a lot of other stuff going on, we have to remember that making some of these small changes now can have a huge impact moving forward. I was having a conversation with a colleague yesterday who was saying that many of her clients say, well, I just need to improve my efficiency here. I just need to get a little bit better here. I just need to reduce my costs here. And of course, as a marketer, that's probably part of your job to make sure that you're getting the most out of your dollars. But it shouldn't just be about efficiency. If you have a bigger goal in mind, if you set your targets higher, you can actually not just improve your efficiency, but in fact really make a difference to your bottom line revenue by understanding better how everything is working together and how you can use those tools, those channels at your disposal to reach your customer in the right moment and do more for your customer. So let's talk a little bit more about what attribution really is. Attribution helps to solve two key problems. So the first one is thinking about cross-channel media mix. We've talked about the many different channels that your customer might interact with on their way to making a purchase decision, or if you're not an e-commerce business, maybe it's not a purchase decision, but the lead gen decision, doing the things you want them to do when they're visiting your business. What we can look at with attribution is how those different channels are working, what role they're playing along that customer path, along that path to conversion, and how you want to credit them, how you want to value the different channels. You can also look at intra-channel optimization, which means that if, for example, you've got a search campaign, and search can, of course, play different roles at different points in the customer journey. So you want to think about how actually am I conducting my search campaign, which pieces of search should I be adjusting to reach the customer in different moments. So you can look at even just optimizing within that single channel. So to do this all well, we need to think back to what we discussed in the holistic measurement section, which is making sure that we've got all the data in one place and making sure that we actually have the right information at our disposal when we need it so that we can accurately compare these different pieces of the campaign. And that goes back to what I said about setting up your Google Analytics correctly, making sure that you're bringing in all the data that you need to have. So the next thing that I'd like to discuss when we're looking at attribution is what are some typical ways that people think about attribution? I think that many marketers today are still stuck in the last click measurement paradigm. And it's something that we've all been using for many years, and it's the easiest way to do it. You think, okay, a customer made a purchase, and right before making that purchase, they clicked on a search ad, and so I'm going to say, hooray, that search ad gave me a great return. But if you think only about that search ad, you're obviously missing out on those earlier parts of the customer journey, and you're not giving full credit to all of the different marketing efforts that you put forth. And you may know in your gut that those earlier marketing efforts had an impact, but what attribution helps you to do is so it's not just a gut feeling anymore. You can actually measure and you can actually see what's happening and give appropriate credit to those different pieces of the customer journey. So you think about which different tools are helping in which different places. And people often ask me the question, hey, which attribution model should I be using? Should I be looking at a last click model? Should I be looking at a first click model? Some kind of customized model? And the answer that I give is really that there's no one single correct model. What you need to do is you need to experiment with different models and see how these different models impact your business and see how that reflects the reality as you expect it. So let's look at a customer case study, which I think actually helps to illustrate this. We work with a company called Gilt. If you're not familiar with them, they're a kind of a membership-based service that provides special promotions and deals on all kinds of services like fashion, decor, travel, activities, etc. So we worked with them on looking at some different attribution modeling techniques. And we saw that, interestingly, depending on which different model they set up, they saw different results. So if they looked at a last click model only, they saw their affiliate traffic performing really, really well. But then when they looked at the first click model, the affiliate didn't look so good. And conversely, their user referrals were performing really well under the first click model and less so under the last click model. And so, what does that mean for Gilt? What does that mean for you guys? It really highlights the danger of doing your marketing efforts solely based on those last click results. If Gilt had just looked at last click only, if Gilt had not considered other different ways of thinking about how they distribute credit for their conversions across that full marketing journey, they might have come to the conclusion that they should reduce their marketing expenditures and only focus on affiliates and forget about referrals and forget about other different channels. And what would have happened there is they would have reduced their ability to acquire new users, and they gradually would have shrunk through attrition. So, it seems like affiliate is the thing that's performing the best if you're only looking at that one model, but in fact, it would have been a real mistake for Gilt. And it's only when they really value all of those key touch points on the customer journey that they can work to ensure that they're maximizing their growth. So they're not just increasing efficiency for one channel, they're seeing how everything works together, and they're doing what they need to do to improve their entire program. So hopefully by now it's clear that attribution is something valuable and something important. But as I mentioned, many people find it's a little bit daunting to get started. So I want to give you some hopefully easy places to get started with this. And the first one I want to mention is benchmarking. In order to understand what's working well for your business, it really helps to put yourself against other businesses in your industry, and even to look at other benchmarks from within your own company, so that what other divisions are doing, even what you've done in your own past campaigns. So take a look at how do those standards look, and how do you look in comparison. And we actually recently launched a new tool called the Customer Journey to Online Purchase, which helps provide some benchmarks and give you that context. So even though this tool, as you can guess from the title, is focused on e-commerce, the concepts are really relevant even if you have a lead generation business. This tool, it looks across actually 11 different industries, and I believe it's 7 different countries, and it explores how all of those different channels work together to help move users to purchase. So that includes display, search, email, your own website, etc. And we look at questions like, where do those different channels impact the user on their journey to purchase? how long does it take customers to actually make that purchase decision, and what is the impact on the length of the purchase decision on that ultimate order value. And we came across some really interesting statistics here. We saw, for example, that different channels play different roles in different industries. Display is something that we generally think of as being an earlier thing in the past that has more of an impact on awareness, which certainly is true for many industries, but we were interested to note that in some industries like travel and auto, display clicks tended to actually occur closer to that purchase decision. So those different industries may have been using those channels differently. The other thing that we saw that was quite interesting is that longer purchase paths tended to actually correlate with higher average order values. So if that's true for your business, what you want to think about is, okay, we may see some value to getting people to convert really quickly, and that is valuable in certain circumstances, but if you can help them get all the information they need, sometimes if it takes them a little longer to make a decision, that's also going to be a good thing for your business. So take these benchmarks. I really encourage you to take a look at this tool. There's a short link right there on the slide, and you can also find that link on the resources PDF. And explore it a little bit. See how it looks. See what it makes you think about for your own business. And once you've done that, once you've got some idea of the benchmarks, there's some other tools that we offer with Google to help you dive deeper into attribution. So if you're using AdWords, you can take a look at search funnels. And I kind of alluded to that earlier. It's basically a tool to help you with that intra-channel attribution to optimize better for what's happening within your search campaigns. So you understand the role of different types of search keywords, and you can adjust how you're spending and how you're prioritizing those. You may want to adapt the messaging at certain points in the journey when you understand better how those tools are having a role. The second one is multi-channel funnels. I did mention this one briefly in the holistic measurement section, but I really want to highlight it more here. I think it's a fantastic tool to really see everything that's happening along that path to purchase, all the different channels that your customer is interacting with. And the data in the customer journey tool that I was just discussing on the prior slide is actually all pulled from the multi-channel funnels report. So we pulled data from about 26,000 Google Analytics customers that had opted into data sharing and aggregated that data and got some really interesting results. And so I think if you go look at that tool, go look at the paths as you see them on the tool, and then kind of compare them to your own multi-channel funnels results, you can get some great information about how you stand, and that can help you to do some more educated decisions on what you're going to do with your marketing programs. And another thing I want to comment on here with multi-channel funnels, I often hear from customers who say things like, you show these long paths that are multiple steps, and then when I actually look at my own data, I've got all these little customer paths that only have 2 steps, and I don't see my email appearing anywhere. So one thing that multi-channel funnels can be helpful with is to identify if you've got holes in your holistic measurement program. If you haven't tagged your email campaigns for Google Analytics, then they're not going to be showing up in multi-channel funnels. So this can be kind of an early warning, that canary for you that lets you know, hey, I'm not really collecting all my data. It's not all filtering in here. I'm not seeing everything link back. We also have an attribution modeling tool in Google Analytics. So once you've kind of got that idea of what your full customer journey looks like and who's involved and what channels are involved, you can go into attribution modeling and you can actually go ahead and start experimenting and see how you want to adjust the credit that you're awarding to those different channels. And the great thing about the attribution modeling tool, it's quite easy to use. You can look at up to 3 different models simultaneously, side by side, and so you can see right at the same time, how does that first click model compare to that last click model, compare to some other customized model that I've created. And that can help you really better inform your decision-making processes. And also, I don't have it listed on this slide here, but if you happen to be a user of DoubleClick, then DoubleClick also offers some other great attribution tools that are similar to these tools that I've just described, so I'd encourage you to check those out as well. So that concludes our section on full credit measurement. Let's move on now to active measurement. So what do I mean when I talk about active measurement? Active measurement is really about moving your data into real action. So making sure that you're not just collecting data for the sake of data, but that you're doing something with it. You need to be sure that you're collecting the right data, that your data sources are working together, that you're also thinking about what's going on behind your measurement plans and making sure you're setting up the right hypotheses and seeking out the right benchmarks to make sense of all of that data. So let's start out by taking a look at data collection and data sources. You want to think about all of the different data systems that you have. We discussed this a bit in the holistic measurement section. And there we're referring more to kind of the principle of making sure that your business isn't divided into silos. So that's, of course, still important. But what I'm discussing here is I want you to think about the different types of data systems you have. You probably have some kind of ad buying platform and some transactional data, maybe customer information, other kinds of offline data. You want to make sure that you're pulling in all of these different data sources into your measurement tools. And that way you can get more complete measurement and have smarter campaigns, making sure that you're not missing anything and that you have measurement that can really be turned into actionable information. You can feed the results that you get out of your measurement tools back into those other data sources and continuously improve. Next, let's make sure we have a plan for our data. So make sure that we're, again, not just producing numbers for the sake of numbers, but that we're actually doing something with them. So that means you got to start out by generating some hypotheses for what you expect to see. You can do that by starting out with the benchmarks that we talked about in the prior section. It's about saying, okay, you know, it's great if I got 7,000 views of this new piece of content that I put up on my website, but is 7,000 actually good for me, or is 7,000 kind of crummy? And the only way you can know that is by looking at your own prior benchmarks, by looking at the benchmarks that you've seen in other industries, other companies in your industry, et cetera. But starting out with those hypotheses means that you're not just going to be producing data for the sake of data. You're not just going to be putting together some pretty spreadsheets or some nice-looking statistics that don't really say anything. The next thing is you want to think about testing. So again, you know, measurement is valuable. It's certainly good to have some things to look at, some lines in the sand to say this is what I achieved. But the best thing you can do with measurement is test so that you can improve in the future. So if you see some kind of result, what can you change? How can you adapt so that you can make it even better? And you need to have a plan to continuously adapt. So that could mean at the end of this campaign, I'm going to test something and do something differently for the next campaign. It can even mean testing right within the course of a campaign. Third, of course, is action. So before you even start collecting your data, it's important to get buy-in from the senior members of your team on how you're going to use that data and what kinds of changes you might be making as a result. So again, it's not just saying, hey, we had 7,000 views of our new thing, but if we got 7,000 and we were hoping for 9,000, that means that we're going to adjust our spending so that we can direct more people through our ad campaigns to come to our site. We're going to take some kind of action based on the results that we see. And you don't need to wait until that campaign's over. As I said, you can use real-time analysis. You can make those changes continuously. Let's take a look at a few tools that we can actually use to help make this work. So first I want to mention a little bit more detail about the kind of data systems and integrations we talked about. Within Google, we offer a bunch of different capabilities to pull in data from our different systems. You can look at a lot of this stuff in Google Analytics and can really help you see everything all in one place and then take action on what you see. So first example is AdWords data. If you don't already have your AdWords and Google Analytics accounts linked, you want to make sure you do that. We're actually running a webinar on that in a few weeks, so I would definitely encourage you guys to attend that if that's something you're not familiar with. And what it means when you pull in that AdWords data is that you can look deeper, go beyond those kind of surface level metrics like CPC and click-through rate, and instead you can explore how your traffic is really performing in terms of engagement and conversions. And if you're using DoubleClick or other kinds of products, DoubleClick Search, DFA, Google Analytics is actually integrated so that your GA data shows up right within those tools next to your campaign metrics. So your data is not just sitting there. You actually can feed it in and automatically optimize based on those tools. And similarly with the AdWords data, if you see those results, you can make better decisions about how you're going to improve your AdWords campaigns based on how you see people interacting with your online presence based on how they're seeing your ads. And finally, I wanted to mention Google Tag Manager, which is another great tool that lets you makes it easier for you to collect high-quality data from all of your different digital marketing partners, and then it helps you to make sure you're pulling in all the data that you need reliably, getting that information, getting it into one place, and being able to use it effectively. Next, I want to reference real-time reporting. I referred to that a little bit earlier in this section. And within Google Analytics, you have this fantastic ability to actually see right in real time what's happening with your campaigns and how they're performing. I've seen some really great examples with some of our clients who were running a TV ad that directed people to their website, and then they could see right in real time how many people were coming and how that was giving them a spike in traffic. And then they were able to adjust their social campaigns to continue to support that activity. So you can take that data and use it right away. You don't have to wait until later next week, next year. Use it right now, adjust your campaign, have a great impact on your results. And then finally, content experiments is another fantastic tool within Google Analytics that lets you actually adjust and experiment with the content that you have on your pages. So you can look at different versions of a landing page. You can change small elements. You can actually change the entire page and then test and see what performs best. So these are, of course, just a couple of examples of how you can perform experiments. I would definitely encourage you to look at other ways all the time of how I can improve my campaign if it's going on. So if I see such and such a result, what's the next thing I'm going to do? How am I going to actually adjust and improve as I move forward? So that was the overview of these three different lenses of measurement: holistic measurement, full credit measurement, and active measurement. I hope that you learned a few things that can help you get started right away today. Just to kind of summarize again what we talked about. In holistic measurement, we talked about developing a comprehensive measurement plan that cuts across your silos and ensuring that your measurement tools capture the full customer journey. In full credit measurement, we talked about looking at different types of benchmarks so you can set the context for your own performance, and then exploring various different types of attribution tools and testing how those different channels are performing for you. And finally, in active measurement, we want to make sure that our systems are integrated so that the measurement outputs that we have can then become direct inputs and help us improve our marketing programs. We want to have a plan for our data that includes setting hypotheses, testing them, and making changes based on what we learn. So again, another plug for that resources PDF. You can take a look at that and kind of refresh yourself on everything we've learned today. And we've gone through a lot today, so I want to leave you with kind of one to-do item. I kind of mentioned it at the beginning of this talk, which is basically give yourself a measurement score. Look back at those different lenses of measurement that we talked about. Think about how your own programs stack up, how you're doing, and just choose one or two areas where you really want to improve today, where you really want to improve this week. So that concludes the presentation. I'd now love to take some questions. I'm going to go back onto speakerphone, and Adam can help me read off the questions.
Thanks so much, Sarah. That was awesome. We received quite a few audience questions. We're going to try and get through about 6 or 7 of them, but the ones that we don't get to, we're going to draft responses on the analytics blog. So if you're not already a reader, the URL is analytics.blogspot.com. Be sure and tune in. So the first question, I think this is actually a good question for someone who is new to attribution. Why do I actually need a model for attribution? And then I guess a follow-up question that I have is, how would my business know if I was brand new to attribution modeling which one to use?
Yeah, so I think why I need an attribution model. I think an attribution model is a way to think about how I'm assigning credit to my different channels. So even if you haven't used the term attribution model before, you already are using some kind of attribution because you're doing something to say, gee, this channel gets credit, So I achieved such and such number of purchases, and therefore I've decided to allocate such and such amount of budget to my channel. So that's essentially already an attribution model. I believe that this channel was having that kind of impact on my ultimate goals. And then in terms of which attribution model to use and how you know what's the right one, I think what I tried to emphasize today is that there's not one easy, quick answer of what to use. You do need to take a look at what would happen if I said, instead of really assigning all that credit here, I spread it out more evenly. So I think I tried to mention it with the idea of this kind of gut feeling, like we know we have some pieces of our marketing program that are more for generating awareness and other pieces of our marketing program that are more for really closing the sale. And it's easy to give all the credit to the one that closes the sale. It's easy to just say, hey, that happened right before the purchase, and so that must have been the thing that solved it. Like I gave out this promotion, and then people came into my store and they bought a slice of pizza, so the promotion clearly solved it. But probably earlier on in the process, you had some other kind of campaign that let people know that you even had a pizza shop. If they didn't know you had a pizza shop in the first place, it wouldn't have mattered when they got in the promotion. They wouldn't have come in and bought a slice of pizza. So you need to look at attribution as a way to give credit to those earlier awareness-generating campaigns, those other things that happen along the path.
Awesome. So that actually leads into the next question, and you kind of already covered it, but I think this is important. You mentioned first click and last click. Can you explain the difference between those two things?
Sure. So I think if we think about our digital campaigns and things that are happening online, people may be clicking at different points, and you can collect data at different points along the path. So if someone clicks on a display ad and then comes to your website, you get a data point. If someone clicks on an email campaign and then comes to your website, you get a data point. If someone clicks on a search ad, comes to your website, you get a data point, etc. So each of those things are customer clicks along the path. So the first click is the first known interaction that you have with that customer where they're actively engaging with you. It doesn't mean that they haven't maybe seen something from you before, but they haven't actively gone and clicked and come to your site and really taken that active step. And so the length of the path can certainly vary depending on the customer, depending on the situation, but maybe there are 3 or 4 or 5 clicks, like active interactions with you before they finally come to your site. So first click versus last click is just looking at the first interaction they had on that path to conversion and then the last interaction they had immediately before converting.
Cool. I have a couple more attribution questions. I think this is a good one. So I think you've explained attribution really well. So now you have an attribution model. You're assigning credit to different channels. Can you share some tips on maybe how you can start to use that to optimize your marketing?
Sure. And actually, before I answer that question, let me just quickly say, anyone who needs to leave, if you could please just fill out that survey before you do leave. But the question again was about how you can actually start to optimize based on what you've learned from attribution models. So I would say, it probably goes back mostly to experimentation. There's rarely a complete direct thing you can do right instantly from your attribution model, but it's saying, okay, like in the case of guilt, they saw that depending on which different attribution model they looked at, affiliate was performing better, referrals were performing better, and maybe if they were only looking at last click, they were thinking, okay, I should be spending a lot more on affiliate. But then when they looked at that first click model, they recognized actually referral is pretty important. So one thing that they might do is they might say, what happens if I experiment with increasing my budget on referral? And set a reasonable timeline, right? Because maybe you know that from your benchmarks that the time it takes between when a new customer signs up and when the new customer becomes active, maybe that takes 3 weeks or a month, or I don't know what's appropriate for your particular business. But look at what happens if I increase my budget in 3 weeks. Do I see an increase in my conversions? And set those kinds of experiments based on kind of realistic benchmarks that you've set for yourself, and have a plan and say, I'm going to look at, do these changes have an impact?
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. This is a question. I have team members in my organization who don't necessarily value all devices yet, i.e. tablets and smartphones. Is there any tips for how you can use data to show the value of these devices? Yeah, actually, so I have a few things to suggest there. One is actually Google has recently come out with a great new website called Think Insights. So that URL is just google.com/think. And if you look on that website, we have lots of great data
There's many different resources that include statistics, that includes articles. There's a full value of mobile calculator that's linked to from there as well. So if you kind of just play around on that site, if your colleagues are the types of people who enjoy looking at that stuff, you can kind of forward them some articles, just show them some demonstrations, some facts, and some numbers about what's actually happening with the world. So that's kind of like general data. Then in terms of your own data that you're collecting, it depends again on how your business is running and how much you're doing with mobile and different types of mobile devices. But you can look at your Google Analytics data. You can say, we're getting X number of visits per day from people on tablets. We're getting X number of visits from people on mobile. These people on mobile are doing certain kinds of behaviors that we really like, and just trying to set out that data. And that goes back to if you've created your measurement plan, you've thought about what your KPIs are. So if your ultimate goal is that you want to be achieving a certain type of conversion, certain type of purchases, and you can demonstrate that mobile and tablet actually are having an impact and they're helping you get there, hopefully that can help persuade your colleagues.
Yeah. Let's just go through two more questions because we're coming up to the end of the hour and I don't want you to feel rushed with your answers. Sarah, this is a good question for you since you actually are the PMM on the multi-channel funnels tool. The question is, I have a website that's not an e-commerce website, but I want to use multi-channel funnels. How would it actually be useful for me if I'm not actually selling anything directly on my website?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I'm actually really glad that one came in because I think this is probably relevant to many of the people in the audience. So multi-channel funnels is definitely not just for people who have e-commerce websites. And this goes back to the question I asked in that measurement planning section about what your business objectives are and what your strategy and your tactics are. So if you don't have an e-commerce website, if you're not an e-commerce business, but your online presence, whether it's a website, apps and mobile, whatever you're doing, you clearly have a reason why you have that. You have some goals, some things that you hope your customers are going to do on your online presence. So, maybe it's that you want to generate leads, maybe it's that you want them to watch content, whatever it is. What you need to do is you need to use that tool in Google Analytics called goals. So think about what your goals are, take some time to write those down, and maybe it means adjusting your site slightly so you can have a better way to collect that goal information. And then you can set up all kinds of different goals using Google Analytics. So the goal could be visiting a particular page. The goal could be engaging with a video for a certain amount of time. It can be the way that they interact with different things on your site. And we also recently did another post on our Google Analytics blog about goals, and so you can learn more about goals there. I definitely encourage you to set those up, and they're actually required to have goals set up before you can use multi-channel funnels. But so once you have those goals set up, you can use multi-channel funnels just the same way as you would if it were an e-commerce site. So if your goal is that you want to get people to fill out a lead generation form and you've set that up as a goal, and in order to get people to do that, you've got an awareness-generating campaign, you have some kind of promotion, some other things that are helping to get people to your website, you can use multi-channel funnels and see what their path looks like on the way to filling out that lead gen form.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. And let's just go with one more question. I think this is a good question to end with because a lot of the topics you went through today are big, meaty topics, and I think if nothing else, everyone watching should come away with some actions to learn more if they're not sure what to do and sort of dive into these. So, Sarah, what are some of your favorite books, articles, blog sites you recommend for ongoing research and learning outside of Google?
Okay, so outside of Google, I think, Adam, I may throw this question back to you because I think you're more of a font of information about this kind of stuff, but some things that I've looked at, so I mentioned the Google sources, and we actually have right on our Google Analytics blog links out to a lot of different other great blogs that some of our partners and other people who we like have worked on. But I think if you read in kind of the tech news and things like Search Engine Land and Marketing Week and those kind of things to kind of come up with them. But Adam, why don't I actually throw it back to you because I think you probably have a lot more right at the tip of your fingertips.
Yeah, so two Googlers who I do recommend following are Avinash, who keeps the blog Occam's Razor, and he does a lot of tips not just for Google Analytics but just analytics in general. Also, Justin Catroni has a great blog called Analytics Talk. I'd also recommend, if you're new to a lot of this, start going to some events, right? There's eMetrics, there's SMX, there's SES, Search Engine Strategies, because, there's a lot of meat to these topics. There's a lot of experts that can go into different areas quite a bit more, and, really it's a it's a marathon, not a sprint, to learn about all this stuff. So if you're still learning, that's okay, and don't feel like you have to know everything right away, especially about topics like attribution and tools like multi-channel funnels, because they're quite complex. But I think as you use them more, really you'll become more comfortable and you'll start to understand how you can bake them into your marketing processes. Well, thanks so much, everyone. And Sarah, that was really awesome. If there's any additional questions, feel free to stay in for a minute, put them in the Q&A, and we'll take the best of them and respond in our blog. And as Sarah asked, please, if you can, remember to fill out the survey on your way out. You can win a Nexus 7, which is awesome.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.